Recently, I participated in English speaking challenge from American English teacher Laura Stack, and a format of this challenge I found really interesting because it really helped me to speak in English more spontaneously, and I decided to make an interview with Laura. In this interview we discussed fear to speak, how to overcome it. Laura gives tips to how to do that and speak freely. In the end of the video there is info how to enroll in her next challenge. But before we start, I want to set up a little game. In this interview, find as many my mistakes as you can, and who finds the biggest number will get a little prize from me. The conditions of this little game in the description box below this video. One more thing I wanted to add: try to shadow Laura's speech. It also can be really good training for your speaking, for your English. So let's go to the interview. Hi Laura, nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for coming. And also I want to say thank you for your great challenge. And by the way, can you introduce yourself in a few words for people who might don't know you?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm the human behind Authentic English Conversations, and I really enjoy talking. So I'm a teacher of English, and recently I've branched out into some new concepts, including the challenge that we're going to talk about, and I also do mini courses. So about me, I grew up in South Korea. My parents were American and Canadian, and we lived in Seoul. After I graduated from high school, I came back to the States and have lived here ever since. And I'm a teacher. A few years ago, I decided to travel. It just was like a lifetime dream of mine. So I traveled for about 2 years. And during that time, I decided to become certified to teach English. So when I was in London, I took my TOEFL course, which was very interesting because British English and American English, although we are from the same base, it has changed a lot over the years. So that was fun. Yeah, that was really great. And so, now I teach English. And I live in Idaho.
Let's talk about your challenge. I also was participating, and you decided to use emails and Facebook group for feedback, for communication. Why did you decide to choose this format, and what do you think? Does it work?
Well, two things that I've learned about people studying English these days. One is people don't have a lot of time, like for one-to-one lessons, for example. And the other thing is, it just seems like English learners need more opportunities to speak. So maybe you've studied English since you were in middle school, and you've used textbooks and watched videos and studied lists of phrasal verbs, for example, but you haven't really had a great opportunity to speak in English. And so the speaking challenge came about from these ideas. And so basically, I would send an email every day with just a part of a story that I had written about something that happened to me. And I would include an audio of that. And in this case, the speaking challenge was focused on phrasal verbs, which are a tricky part of learning English, but a really important part of being fluent. And so every day there were maybe 3 or 4 phrasal verbs in the email that I sent. And then maybe the most important part was the fact that there was a prompt or a question for the person, for you to respond to. And I tried to make those prompts really open-ended, like, have you ever been pulled over by the police? Or tell of a time when you turned someone down and it turned out to be for the best. So people's responses to that were widely varied and quite interesting, really. Didn't you think so?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I was hoping it would be that all of the phrasal verbs wouldn't be new, but that it would be a review of some phrasal verbs, and then in the response, you used the phrasal verbs from that day. And I think it worked out really well. Additionally, and I don't know how much you did this, but you could listen to other people's responses and how they use the phrasal verbs, and you could hear my feedback to them. So, yeah, all in all, I think it was pretty successful.
How do you estimate results of students?
I think that, first of all, I don't think the phrasal verbs were 100% new for you, for example. So it was a review, and then you used them, you learned new words, new phrases, and that's a really good question, and I would like to do a follow-up for that. In fact, I did a little follow-up on Facebook, kind of to poke your memory a little bit, jog your memory.
What do you think about the role of the review, about repetition, regarding learning language?
Oh, I think it's vital. I think it's so important. And I was thinking the other day about sharing. It's called the Gold List Method. Have you heard of that? It's a little bit controversial. It's for language learning, and you make a list of 15 words, and you put it away for 2 weeks, and you look at it again, and then you review them, and you cross off the ones and you put it away again for 2 weeks. So I think it's really important to go back and review.
What do you think was the most challenging for your students, for people who was participating?
I think the people who signed up for the challenge and actually participated in it were people that were willing to put themselves out there. So they were more extroverted, less shy, and speaking for them wasn't difficult. I didn't think it was difficult for anyone, but there were half the people who signed up didn't participate at all. I think that's a pretty big challenge, right? To overcome that barrier of the fear of speaking in English. And so I think that is something that we all have to overcome when we're learning a language.
Do you think that fear to speak, to speak up, to communicate is the biggest enemy of any learners?
Yeah, and it's related. There's 2 parts to it. So the fear of making a mistake, with fear of looking silly or someone not understanding you, because that's so challenging. You get up your courage to say something, and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about, And I think the other obstacle is perfectionism. Not wanting to speak until you can say it perfectly. And that doesn't make sense. And I like Lindsay Does Languages. That's a website, and she just talks about learning languages. And she set for herself mistake goals. So she decided she wanted to make like 10 mistakes a day. That was her goal. But you have to understand, it's like reverse thinking. If she makes 10 mistakes a day, she has to be speaking, and she has to be speaking quite a bit.
About making mistakes, I think it's really, interesting and unusual idea, because everyone hates making mistakes.
Yeah.
What do you think? How to overcome, how to fix this kind of error in people, in English learners or any learners of any foreign languages?
Yeah, I think that just getting together in a safe environment and speaking. Find a conversation partner who's about the same level as you, and just start speaking. And you can tell about your day, you can tell about your childhood. It doesn't matter what you talk about. Just start speaking. And as you work through it, and I would recommend recording it, which you can do on Skype or Zoom. So have a 1 hour conversation, or even half an hour if you're nervous, and then watch your recording. You will hear your mistakes, and it'll give you courage to carry on and have another conversation with your speaking partner.
You know, there is such a thing when English learners, as for me, for example, I'm not so afraid to speak and make mistakes when I'm communicating with other learners, you know. But when it's time to speak to a native speaker who actually speaks like without mistakes, you know, so it's really scary. What can you say about this as a native speaker?
Well, I think of two things. One thing is, if I were learning Russian and speaking to you, how would you feel about me? I think you would feel like, this is great, you're learning my language.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't judge me for my mistakes. So you got to think about that, you know. And those of us that are native speakers, we just happen to be born in a country that speaks English. It's not like we did anything great to, you know, it's not our work at all. So and the second thing that I want to say about that is, someone said, don't let the fear of making mistakes stop you from speaking in your new language. You're gonna look good if you have something interesting to say. And I think that's really important. Just focus on the connection with the other person, and
on a message,
we all have something interesting to say.
On the story, on your message, on your thoughts,
Yeah, it gets really boring when I'm speaking with students and they're apologizing for their English. That's not an interesting conversation for me to have.
Yeah, I think it looks weird because I can imagine if someone who tries to speak in Russian. Oh, sorry for my Russian, you know.
Yeah.
You know, you shouldn't be sorry. You are trying, and I can notice it by myself that you are not native speaker, so you shouldn't prepare me, you know, for that.
Yeah, you don't need to tell me. I already know this. Yeah.
When are you going to start your next challenge?
So I'm going to, I'm thinking about doing 2 challenges in June, and maybe that's more than what I should plan. But the 1st of June, I was going to offer the phrasal verb challenge again. I've modified it a little bit, and I would love to see another group of people do that challenge. And then I'm going to do on the 15th, I'm planning a new challenge for people like you who already did the first challenge, but I don't know what it is going to be about.
Who can participate? How people can find you?
Probably through my Facebook page at this point. I don't have a website or anything set up like that. I might give you a link.
Yeah, I think we can put it below in the description box.
Okay.
That sounds great. Below this video. It was cool conversation. Thank you, Laura, for participating.
Good. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
So, bye.
Okay. See you later. Thanks.